Welcome to the Healers Café, the #1 show for medical practitioners and holistic healers to have heart-to-heart conversations about their day-to-day lives while sharing their expertise for improving your health and wellness. Welcome to the Healers Café, and today I have with me Shannon Leggett. And she's a licensed physical therapist, a certified yoga instructor, and owner of Shannon Leggett Physical Therapy. And she has had her career for 20 plus years in New York City, helping thousands of corporate executives and high-level athletes recover from injury. There's so much here to share, but I think I'm gonna just go straight to first of all, what got you into this and what made you interested in this, and then what shifted and changed as you were combining these two passions.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you so much for having me today to share a little bit about my journey, both from a business perspective and a healing perspective. My business model is very much connected to my own healing journey. So I'm excited to share a little bit about that with you. I have been a physical therapist since 1999. I kind of got into the profession because I was encouraged by my mom that I had good hands and that it could be something that I did when I was married and had babies, right?
Hmm.
It would be like a lovely little like side gig. So then I turned 35 and there was like no marriage or kids in sight. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, do I even like this? Like, what am I doing? I had kind of like a midlife crisis, although it wasn't a midlife. It was like, what am I really doing with my life? And is this the direction that I wanted to be heading in? And at this point, I had been practicing for over a decade in outpatient orthopedic clinics. They were insurance based. So it was very much surrounded by numbers and productivity, not necessarily delivering quality care. Um, and I'm the type of person that wants to deliver as much quality care as I possibly can. And I found myself burnt out like time and time again in those insurance-based medical models. Um, and I just didn't know, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And I knew I needed to make a change and figure out how I could make this career in physical therapy more sustainable, joyful, fulfilling than it was, and be healthy myself. And at this point, I had gotten into yoga. I was a very avid yogi practitioner. I am someone who suffers from anxiety and depression. So, yoga rather, has been a very important part of my path. So I knew what it was like and what it could do for me. And also when I'm a problem solver, right? I'm a clinician. I want to solve problems. So I'm like, I'm going to solve my anxiety and depression. I'm going to do it. And yes, I went the traditional medical model, but I knew that there was more that I could be doing for myself and on my own. And I started dabbling in nutrition, and I brought more of like the breath work and the meditation from the yoga end of things. And I started paying attention to how I talked to myself, how I felt around certain people. And I just really, with all of this, I started to make massive changes for myself, right?
Mhm.
And I realized, like, wow, you can feel really good.
Nice.
There were ways that and I didn't realize how bad I felt, right? So then I started kind of noticing a lot of different things with my patients, right? Like
Mm.
they come to me basically because they're in pain, but I'm also the clinician that they spend the most time with sometimes, right?
Right.
They see me once or twice a week.
Yeah.
So you start to get to know them, their medical history. And, was working in Midtown Manhattan at this point. So people are high stress jobs. It's a high stress city. Um, And then they're starting to talk about their gastrointestinal issues and their autoimmune disorders and their fertility issues. And you're like, wait a minute, like these people are stressed. And stress is having a big component and big factor, so to speak, in how they heal from pain And wouldn't I be a much better clinician if I was able to help them treat their chronic stress, help
Mhm.
them implement some lifestyle changes, and I would be better. Their pain would be better. I would be more effective and an efficient clinician. So that's when I started to weave my yoga into things and dabbling in, hey, these are some things that help me with my stress. Like, let's see if they're going to help Jane Doe. And I
Mhm.
started to have some really cool results. And those chronic pain patients, those hard to treat patients, like really started to get better. And I was like, ooh, I'm onto something. And this feels really good. And this feels really right. Right. Like, because if you start to pay attention to how you feel in certain situations, you're like, oh, this is where I need to go. So I
Mhm.
got my yoga instructor certification in 2016, um, and started weaving it a little bit more. But it wasn't until the pandemic of 2020 where I was furloughed and realized that I got a really nice break and I got some rest, that I was miserable. I
Mm.
hated it. I hated what I was doing. I hated how I delivered care. I
Yeah.
wanted more. I needed more. And I couldn't look at myself in the mirror anymore. And so, like, I had a choice, right? I was either going to choose that or I was going to take a chance on myself and put this package, like this powerful package that I had together, and go out
Mhm.
on my own. And I did. In May of 2021, I went full time, and I've been treating patients privately in their homes ever since with my integrative model.
Amazing. Wow. I mean, that's definitely courage to do all that, but it's like, I hate to look at this pandemic as an opportunity, but it was said by several people, it's an opportunity. And it was an
Listen,
opportunity for bad, but it was also an opportunity for good, you know?
100%. It is not, someone who is like go, go, go by personality. And I never would have given myself that rest.
No,
I wouldn't have.
no.
It was like it was a forced rest.
Yeah.
But there are people out there, and I think being a mind body practitioner yourself and understanding the connection, right? Like, I think all the work that I'd done up until that point of paying attention,
Yeah.
right? Of how do I feel in this moment? What's going on internally? I was able to really see the change in myself having that rest. And whoa, like there are things that spark joy, and I am a joyful person. I'm not this cranky, tired, burnt out human that the system that I was working in has created. Um, and I wanted more of the joy. I wanted more of the joyful, creative person. But that's
Mhm.
what happens, right? When you come out of chronic stress, you're allowed to access all of that
Right.
creativity and that joy. So it was an opportunity that I used to really kind of transform myself, my health, my happiness. I'm a better clinician for it.
Yeah. 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 And it just comes, to show too how our own self-care is essential to really allow our full creativity. Like when we're in the profession of helping others,
Hmm.
we don't always think creativity matters, but it does because we're constantly evolving. We're adding things. We've learned things along the way, right? So it's like we
Sure.
have to incorporate all this, and taking a pause is one of the best ways to incorporate all the information that we're sort of swimming quickly by, but we haven't just sat with, so um
Sure.
I think and I'm saying this too because I'm thinking of what will happen in the next years to come when there's going to be, I imagine, big rewrites about our medical system, or so-called healthcare, which is, I think the word health was borrowed. I don't think it ever was healthcare.
Oh, I don't think so either.
It was sick care, you know.
Absolutely. And to think about, right, like lifestyle management, making changes in, diet, sleep, all of that, it's so much cheaper.
Yes,
Like, it's so much cheaper, and I think so much more empowering, right? Because people take control. They take
yes.
control of their health. They watch the changes. Like, And I think healthcare needs to be more empowered than it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's based on the sort of expert model, right? And the,
Sure.
ask no questions, and just follow whatever leader, paid leader, you know,
Sure. Who's
paid
human?
industries.
Who's human and doesn't have all the answers
Yeah,
and isn't living in, your body.
yeah.
And I think that's what's so hard is that people get so disconnected from their
Yes.
physical structure and what it's telling you, that they lose the ability to listen. The body's powerful. It tells you. It tells you what it needs. That's what I tell my patients all the time. I'm like, your pain is telling you to be here. Your pain is asking you to make a change, right?
Yeah.
Something is askew. You need to fix it. And, use your pain is more of a vehicle than it
Mhm.
is an actual like predator.
Yeah.
It's a vehicle for change.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Rather than a predator, it's true. Right. And it's
Yeah,
really
it's true. But then because people then fear it, it becomes the monster,
exactly.
right? But it's actually your body's way of telling you like you need to make a change somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
And whether it's a physical injury or there's some trauma that's being stored there and it's being presented as pain, you know? So I
Well,
don't
we
know.
use like without thinking of it, the war analogy, right? We're at war with our bodies, and then we're gonna have more war as solutions, right? It's
Sure.
like we're not there, right? Times have changed, and
Sure.
we have to work with our bodies. And like you say, why are we having these symptoms? Is there anything that we can see? And I don't know. I mean, from my experience, I'm not in practice now because that's one of the changes that also came along. It,
Was that a COVID related change for you?
it certainly was.
All right.
In British Columbia, the ability to practice comes with having to follow certain non proven experimental choices. They're not really
Okay.
choices when you have to. So if your opinion is that you should wait and see until the research is out, well, it's too bad for you. So then you have to make decisions, right? And
Right.
and I think BC is the last part of the world. It's not the whole country. It's actually British Columbia in Canada is the last
Oh,
bastion of that everybody has to take it, especially in healthcare. So
very interesting.
very interesting, yes, because even places that were very pro at the beginning have changed.
Hmm.
Many places in the world, it's not even allowed under the age of
Wow.
50, and
Wow.
because of the actual research, that
Sure.
on us. So anyway, but yes, I actually welcome. I didn't like the fact that it's like, when we talk about choice,
Hmm.
it's choice when there is no other choice available. Like people say, well, it's your choice. Sure, it's a choice to keep your practice or to keep your belief about
Right.
what your body needs for health.
Right.
You could say it's a choice, but it's really coercion. If you're
Yeah, absolutely.
very,
But that was not a choice.
very honest.
Right. Because if you had your choice, you would have done both.
That's
Right. Worked right for my body and like I'm gonna keep my practice. That would have
that's
been your choice. But you
yes.
couldn't.
No,
Therefore, that's
exactly.
not a choice.
Yeah, and it's hard to, with the lack of logic that's happening these days, uh,
Mm.
just common sense stuff. People don't see that. They just think that you still had a choice, and it's like, no, no, that's not choice means options, at least two. You know?
Right. Right. You
Anyway,
were missing one.
uh,
Yeah. You're like, this doesn't compute.
yeah, but then if you look at the world in a with a bigger picture, and you go, well, there are no accidents,
Mm,
you
so
know,
true.
and it's like this is not done to me, it's done for me, right? It's
Hmm.
a bit like your story, what you're sharing there. I was really relating to that. It's like, okay, so you had this forced moment away, but it actually allowed you to be completely who you're meant to be in this world.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And, I think it came at a time when I was ready to really listen,
But that's
right?
the time it could come.
Yeah, very true,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah, because we talk about, patience, when are you ready to heal? It's also when you're ready to listen and the
Mhm,
teacher will show up, right?
right.
The mentor or the person that, and they could be doing exactly the same work, but two
Sure.
years ago it didn't work. So is it the therapist or is it the timing
Mhm.
that it fell on deaf ears and that it actually takes patient participation to get results?
It's so funny that you say that because I have a client that I've been working with on and off. He's here in New York half a year and then in Australia half a year. And he's back and we've been working on some things and I'm seeing like dramatic changes. And yes, I've been playing with some different concepts and putting like different pieces together of the puzzle for him. But he said something to me. He's like, "You need to start coming more often. I'm ready to be done with this." And I'm like, I
Oh,
sat back and I'm like, you know what? I really actually think that's why he's getting better. I'm like, I'm like, maybe I am a genius. I don't know. But is it his just willingness to now actually put some of the pieces together that I've been telling him? And just his brain is like, done. He's like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, let's go.
yeah,
It's very funny that you say that. I was like, yeah, I think it's just time. His body's ready. His body's ready to go back to normal.
yeah.
It's kind of interesting to me. Personally, I'd like to take all the credit, but I know better
Yeah.
because the brain is a powerful place.
What would your life be like if you were pain-free? If you were one of the millions who suffer from chronic pain, the thought of just one day without it may seem impossible. This is often because conventional medicine tends to fall short in the treatment of pain, opting to prescribe pills or recommend surgery rather than getting to the root cause of the problem. But if you are suffering with emotional or physical pain, there is hope. Join the founder and CEO of Bowen College, Manon Bolliger, live online for your body-mind reboot. Learn how to listen to your symptoms and get to the root cause of your pain. Plus, be trained in basic Bowen therapy moves so that you can reboot your body for optimal health. You don't have to live in pain. You can heal. Stop the pain pill cycle by visiting www.yourbodymindreboot.com to learn more and to register.
Right? We don't learn until we're ready. We don't let go until we're ready. And there ain't no one that's going to speed that up at
No,
all.
no.
Mm-mm.
I think it's, and I think your point is true of the client and of the practitioner.
No, thank you.
It's true. It's both, right?
Yeah,
Like
no, it's both. It's
it's
both.
both.
But
It has to be both, right? It
100%, but I've seen a change in his behavior.
Yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
the science behind change, right? People don't really make the massive transformative changes until they're absolutely ready to do it.
yeah. And I wasn't meaning this last guy. I just mean in print in
In
general.
general.
It's both,
Sure.
but in this,
Sure.
it sounds like he's ready. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's like, let's do it.
yeah. So with this now, with this change where you have kind of a newfound freedom because you make your own hours, you make your own rules, more or less. I mean, it has to be convenient to your clients. Uh,
Sure.
but what have you found? Are there new challenges you didn't expect?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yes. Um, I am a clinician at heart. I want to be in the trenches. Um, but there are other tasks that need to be taken care of, right? There's the back end stuff, there's the correspondence, there's the billing, there's the marketing.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, believe it or not, I'm like, I deal with some social anxiety. So marketing does not come easy to me. Networking does not come easy to me, but you don't grow unless you do it.
Mhm.
So I've just had a hard time figuring out where to go, how to do it. I mean, I know, actually, you know what? No, I know how to do it. I know where I need to go. I just drag my heels because it makes me uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Listen, and I'm very grateful that I've been around doing this for 20 years. I've always had a following. Um, it's a grassroots kind of thing for me, which I like love. Um, but that's not always sustainable. So you have to kind of get out there and put yourself out there. And that to me is my biggest challenge. For sure.
But
Is
do you believe that that's actually true, that you actually have to put yourself out there, or is that a belief that you should?
So it's interesting that you say that. I think because I worked so long in big business in
Yeah.
physical therapy, and there was a lot of marketing and sales, and so I feel like it's almost ingrained in me sometimes that that's how I have to be knocking on doctors' doors and
Yeah.
sending gifts and all this stuff. But if I were to sit back and close my eyes and be like, what do you actually need to do and what feels right? I don't feel like I need to put myself out there so much. So it's a very interesting question that you ask that.
Hmm.
Because even without doing all of that, there's growth, right?
Go figure. Yeah.
There's growth. And what's really kind of funny, and this goes back to the self-care situation, um, is that in the last couple of months have really been like, you know what? You need to, some of your non-negotiables you have thrown out the window, you need to bring them back. And the more that I take care of myself nutritionally, sleep, like doing everything, I feel like the stronger I am, the more energy I have to put out there. And that is bringing more in than any knock on the door would ever help me with. So I'm like noticing that too. It's like, well, if I just take care of myself and I be myself,
Yeah.
things come. Things come.
Yeah, well, it's just because then you probably know this, but I am the founder of Bowen College, right? The
Mhm.
college that I'm running, and so I also I have a marketing aspect to what we teach,
Right.
and when it comes right down to it, you have to market yourself, but it has to be yourself. So
Sure.
what is really most aligned with you? Because that's how people are going to find you,
Hmm.
is you doing you,
Right.
so one of the, just like still a thought that, that comes is you're working from home. You could have a once a month meet you and bring a friend who wants to know a little bit about what you do. So
Right.
it's kind of in your place, it's in your space, it's
Hmm.
people that, some of them that you already know, and an opportunity for those that, kind of are curious, but they don't really know. And they kind of just want to know who you are in that sense.
Right.
And I've suggested that kind of thing, whether it's in the clinic, if they're in a clinic or whatever, but to have some sort of place that people can come meet them on that personal level.
I absolutely love that. I really do.
And it
And you know
works.
what? It's because I said this the other day. I'm like, I'm at my best when I'm in front of people.
Mhm.
So why don't, so it just goes along with what you say, right? Like when I'm
Yeah,
just being me, that's
exactly.
it. I
And
love it.
you don't have to go out to meet
I'm
people.
gonna do it.
Oh, we'll have to have a follow up and see what happened.
I know.
Yeah,
It's a lovely tip. And almost just giving you giving permission to myself to just be and just do that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because that's honestly what feels aligned and most comfortable. I mean, listen, I've built clinics for others like without marketing. It's like just my own skill and charming personality.
Really.
So I know that it works. So why am I beating myself up so much? Getting out there and be like, hi, like me, send me patients. I don't need to do that.
You don't.
No.
And I think, it's a big deal for a lot of practitioners, right? It's the belief it has to be another way. Now, I have some practitioners that are like, they love social media. They can
Right.
they can have it. Then they can do their thing on social media.
Sure.
And they're going to find people that love social media that are on it, that, they'll advertise there. But if you're not on social media because it's not your thing, then, why would you attract people there? It doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense.
And we live in this scarcity idea that we're not going to be found unless we do the thing that everyone does. But people aren't looking for everyone. They're looking for you. So
It is true. It's true. And I mean, I recognize that like I'm not necessarily for everyone, right?
oh, well, that's the good part.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, I'm not. Because I make people think, I make people pay attention to their bodies. They don't want to. They're like, just give me, do whatever you need to do to me and like send me on my way. And I'm like, that's not how I roll.
Yeah.
Like you're going to learn and you're going to become very much attuned and in tune to what you're doing and how you're breathing and where you're holding tension. Like you're going to learn, you're going to leave me understanding your body more than you ever have.
Yeah.
But that becomes, so it's interesting. And that becomes like the people that find me are those who are looking, this idea of discernment, right? Mm-hmm. They're looking for something different in their care. They don't want the same. They want to be empowered. They want to learn. And I find that that's kind of who comes.
Yeah. But that's who you want.
Who comes.
That's who you want, right? So I think that's the idea, is that if we could actually notice that we're in a world of plentifulness.
And it's so true.
We have plenty of what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're just making it clear and playing on that realm, then we have plenty happening. It's not,
absolutely,
we just complicate things, right? It's like healing. Oh, it's complicated. No, it's not. When you're ready.
Yes. 100%.
So we've talked a lot about practice and all that, and we've got like 5 minutes left, but I wanted to, how do you, like the yoga piece and the breathing, or how do you work that with, what have you noticed is the biggest impact of those aspects of integrating that with the physical therapy? Because I think that's it's a huge area, and I'd say something about that.
Yeah, sure. A lot of my clients, right, are patients who are under a tremendous amount of stress. And with stress creates muscle tension, right? Which is very different from muscle tightness, right? This idea of tension versus tightness. Tightness is an orthopedic decreased flexibility in a muscle. Tension is actually your nervous system is creating tightness. Two very different ways of treating that, right? A stretch isn't going to help you with your stress-driven muscle tension. And that's where the breath work comes in, right? The most powerful tool we have and can be done anywhere is some diaphragmatic breathing, right? And that helps us turn off that fight or flight part of our nervous system, which is driving that tension. And then the muscles can relax and you have more freedom of movement. And you might actually have decreased pain, because maybe it's actually the muscle tension, that nervous system tension, that's creating the pain and the discomfort, and not because something is tight and needs to be stretched. So breath to me is a cornerstone of yoga, and it's a cornerstone of my practice. Mental health informs physical health, which informs mental health, and it's a continuous cycle. So if you don't treat the stuff that's going on with the nervous system, you're not going to be successful treating something orthopedically. That's just kind of how I view it. And I think the other part of yoga is the idea of this mindfulness. Mm-hmm. If you look at the sutras, the Yoga Sutras, the first one is yoga is now. It's a way of bringing someone into the present. It's a way of teaching them to come into their body a little bit, to become aware, to slow down. So I really use that mindfulness part, that coming to the presence, for people to start to notice their habits. Today I talked to a new patient today, and she's like, I can't even relax when I watch Netflix. And I'm like, but that's not relaxing. That's not relaxation. Like, Relaxation is something that needs to be learned and you need to teach yourself. But I'm like, but that's a really good piece of awareness, right? Because every time you go and you sit down and watch Netflix, like maybe you're not as tense. Maybe you're not as tight after doing some of this breath work. Like start to learn, put things into practice and see. So it's bringing that mindfulness component to healing and paying attention to your body. That whole idea of yoga is now in the present is probably another big cornerstone of how I do things. And then there's using the poses as exercises, right?
Yep.
They're great multi-joint stretchers, or, looking at some of the fascial systems, right? Like a downward facing dog, like is amazing to get a calf stretch, hamstring stretch, right? Shoulders, it's like that whole posterior chain, you get a stretch. Everyone in New York City wants to be efficient, more bang for your buck. So I'm like, oh, you could stretch so many things in this one pose. Like, let's do it. I'm like, oh, great. Like, cause I don't have time for anything more than that. So I do use like the physical practice for some strengthening, for some mobility work, for just kind of building some awareness as well. One of my favorite poses to teach is Tadasana, which is mountain pose, but like that is posture from head to toe, that's grounding through your feet. And that is then a blueprint for every single exercise that they need to do, whether it's a squat or a deadlift. It's like, well, let's learn how to have your feet on the ground, like soften your knees, like ribs over pelvis, like get yourself in that Tadasana. And then once you're there, that is a blueprint then for anything else that you do, a plank, right? Yep. So I definitely kind of weave it into real life.
Mm-hmm. And with the breath itself, when you say
I love breath.
Why can't I pronounce the word? Diaphragmatic. There we go.
Yes.
I can't even blame it on the French. Why I can't say it. But what is your favorite method? Because there's so many, in, hold, not hold, in
and out.
In and out. So you're
in
not
and out. Let's not make it any complicated than it has to be. Because here's the thing. People don't even know how to diaphragmatically breathe properly, right? So then let's just start there. Let's get you actually opening and closing your ribs, getting the belly, ribs, shoulders, like everybody breathes with their, so I just like to keep it simple. I like to keep it simple, like less thought, the better. Lay on the floor, throw your legs over something, get comfy. So honestly, like we're simple here at Shannon Leggett Physical Therapy. Like keep it easy. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't. Just do it because it does powerful things.
Yes.
It's funny, right? Like I did my restorative yoga teacher training a couple of years ago. And over that 4 days of like breathing and conscious relaxation, my neck pain was gone. And that to me was like, it blew me away because like I knew, but I like felt it in my body, how like powerful the breath could be to ease that tension, that pain that I was feeling. I'm like, so I don't have to stretch for like 10 hours a day in my neck. Like I could just lay on the floor and breathe. And that's when I was really like, okay, I need to start bringing some more yoga into my practice with my patients because this is powerful stuff. Yeah. It's powerful.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much.
Your wisdom and and the inspiration, right? That people can heal. I always find that it can't be said enough. So thank you.
Yes, you can heal. You can heal. And you know what? Sometimes it just takes finding the right practitioner, right? Because it's so much about the alliance and the relationship that dictates, I think, success sometimes. So if you haven't found your right person, keep looking.
Yeah.
Keep looking.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with me here.
Well, thank you so much. I really loved our time and our conversation. It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café. If you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on as I post a new podcast every Wednesday with tons of useful information and tips for natural healing that you won't want to miss.